It sounds like a plot from a Hollywood thriller. New York City spared from disaster in the nick of time. Today, new details emerging about how the suspected Boston bombers were reportedly plotting to attack Times Square last week. Those very streets you see behind me. As millions of New Yorkers shudder at the thought of what could have been, ABC's chief investigative correspondent Brian Ross uncovers the alleged deadly plan gone awry mere hours before detonation.
Juju, based on what the New York mayor and police commissioner said Thursday, New York just missed being attacked by the accused Boston bombers as they apparently sought to maim and kill again.
The fact is, New York City remains a prime target for those who hate America and want to kill Americans.
And no target seems more attractive than Times Square. Mayor Michael Bloomberg says the surviving brother told the FBI he and his older brother made the decision to head here 1 week ago tonight and carry off a second attack at this crowded crossroad.
The Boston Marathon bombers had planned to travel to Manhattan to detonate the remaining bombs in Times Square.
The official said it was a spur-of-the-moment decision by the two brothers, whose faces just a few hours earlier had been broadcast across the nation at an FBI news conference.
They discussed this while driving around in the Mercedes SUV that they had hijacked after they shot and killed an MIT police officer in Cambridge.
But New York was spared, officials say, when the two accused bombers had to stop for gas in the hijacked car. And the younger brother, 19-year-old Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, went inside for some snacks. It was the turning point.
The driver used the opportunity to escape and call the police. That eventually led to the shootout in Watertown.
There's definitely hand grenades, and automatic gunfire.
That shootout, captured in these still photos, involved a violent gunfight. And authorities said the two had at least 6 unexploded bombs, including another pressure cooker device, seen here.
We have reports that they have explosives here at the scene. There are explosives here at the scene.
Just some of what might have been used in Times Square.
They had built these additional explosives, and we know they had the capacity to carry out the attacks. We don't know if we would have been able to stop the terrorists had they arrived here from Boston. We're just thankful that we didn't have to find out that answer.
New York officials say the 19-year-old brother at first told the FBI that he and his brother would go to New York just to party, as he did twice last year with some of his college friends, seen in this online photo posted on a Russian social network site. But in a second hospital interview Sunday night, Dzhokhar told a different story, officials said. More awake and speaking in his own voice to the agent.
Was more lucid, we're told, in the second interview, and was more expansive, giving more detail.
The younger Tsarnaev was reportedly questioned for about 16 hours before FBI agents were told they had to stop and read him his legal rights, according to Republican Congressman Peter King of New York.
Well, there's a tremendous amount of information we don't know, and I can only believe we would have gotten at least some of that information if the interrogation could have gone on. My understanding was the interrogation was going to last about 48 hours. It was ended by the judge after 16 hours.
Times Square has been targeted before. In 2010, another self-radicalized jihadist drove a car packed with explosives into Times Square on a Saturday night with thousands in the street. His bombs, including one of those pressure cooker devices, all failed to detonate. It's just after 7 in Times Square and the place is jammed. This is prime time. Office workers heading home, people going out for dinner or trying to rush to catch a Broadway show. I'm joined here by former New York City Police Detective Nick Casal, who's worked terrorism cases for years. Mr. Casal, if the bombs had been planted here of the kind that were used in the marathon, what would be the effect?
Probably more devastating than it was in Boston. Just look around the amount of the crowd here. And also there's a difference here. Everybody there was focused in one direction. Here people are just moving about. You'd probably have at least 1 score or 2 scores of casualties and twice that number wounded.
New York does have an extensive surveillance camera operation in place here in Times Square. The mayor said the case involving the bombers justified the use of such surveillance.
We've made major investments in camera technology, notwithstanding the objections of some special interests. And the attacks in Boston, I think, demonstrate just how valuable those cameras can be.
But former Detective Casal says in a place like Times Square, with so much going on, so many distractions, a bag with a bomb in it might well go undetected.
In this crowd right now, mostly all tourists, milling around, looking up, not knowing where they are, it's an ideal setting. Nobody would pick it up. And remember, they went off shortly thereafter.
The mayor said today, we don't know whether we could have stopped them if they got this far. He counted on the surveillance cameras that are all over here. What do you think?
Well, again, surveillance cameras are great, but they're an investigative tool. They tell us what happened before, during, and after, and who did it. But they are not a deterrent.
That's what happened in Boston. The surveillance cameras were used later to identify the two suspected bombers, but they did not stop them. The FBI says the younger of the alleged bombers, Dzhokhar, with his white cap worn backwards, put his bag down at the feet of a group that included children. And then 10 seconds later, it was detonated. The FBI says the talk by the brothers about going to New York was just that, talk, and that New York was never part of the original plot. Even so, officials here say their only course of action is to respond to any threat. Better safe, they say, than sorry.